guys, welcome to Podcast Fandom, the official podcast for ProjectFandom.com. I'm your host, Nina.
I'm Ellen.
And I'm Sarah.
And we are back to discuss The Staircase. We're going to be talking about episode 5, The Beating Heart.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what I told you guys. Like, the titles have been different, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think the titles are different on IMDb versus HBO.
I wonder if they had like working titles or something.
Probably,
like
yeah. But this one, I just want to double check. Yeah, it's The Beating Heart. So quick warning. Well, I was going to warn the listeners that they may hear me eating during the podcast because, as I explained to Sarah and Ellen before we started, my tutoring ran long today and I haven't had a chance to eat, but my dog's not going to let me eat. So you will hear me drinking a cup of coffee. You won't have to hear me trying to eat quietly. But the other warning stands. My edible might kick in before we're done. I make no apologies. Because it's been a day, y'all. It's been a day. And it's 3 p.m. where I am. It's fair game for edibles. Okay. Ladies, I just want to say, before we get started proper, I was a little nervous going into... No, you got to go. You got to move him. He is panting into my mic. Beat it, beatnik. You know where I got that from? Beat it, beatnik. Do you guys know... I can't believe I just said that. Do you guys see the movie Clue?
Do you remember? Years and years ago.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I still clearly will quote that movie. Yeah, Beat It, Beatnik was from that. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh, I was really nervous going into this episode because I was trying to remember, again, having watched the documentary, like the flow of what happens now. And I remembered he got convicted and he does spend some time in prison. So I was like, what happens while he's in prison that could make for interesting TV? Like, what? Oh boy.
Well.
But you know what's funny? So I gotta stop referring to these as people as characters, right? Because they're based on real people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I feel bad saying, oh, the characters. But I will say what got me through this episode, one of the reasons I think it remained like good and interesting and held my interest this week, is because of the documentary. I did start to feel like I knew these people, you know? So it was just like, oh yeah, what was going on with Margaret during that time? What was Martha up to? I felt like interested in knowing like what they were going through while this man was in prison. So those were my overall thoughts. I was a little nervous going into this episode, but I was overall pleased. And there's some shit we definitely have to talk about. I can't wait to get into it.
Todd was up to the most.
Oh my God. I did not need to see Patrick Sword. Is that his real name? Patrick Schwarzenegger?
Mm-hmm.
Dancing to Juvenile. Like, I could have gone another 47 years of my black ass life and never seen that and been fine.
In slow motion, no less.
Right? Just all, I don't know what beats he was on, but it was none of the ones in that song. But what about you, Ellen? Overall thoughts on episode 5?
Overall, I liked it. I think I'm having one of those. I'm sympathizing with the character more than I probably would if she were played by a different actress. I'm talking about the Sophie character.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay.
Because, just hearing about the relationship and how it went down, I'm like, ew. Like, gross.
Wait, okay, so do you mean, like, outside of what they showed us in this episode? Like...
Yeah, like, overall. Like,
okay, got it.
Like, from a viewer point of view and just from knowing about the story, that type of thing. Because I question, I guess there can never be full, like, 100% objectivity in something like this. But when someone who's, like, editing gets in, like, that intimately involved with the subject of the piece, it just makes me have questions,
No, that's fair. That's fair.
But Juliette Binoche is so, like, she's just so cute and she's so likable.
Mm-hmm.
That I was like, oh, I guess I could kind of see how someone could fall in love through letters, and then I'm like, ew, gross.
But listen, but
myself,
I will say, we didn't talk about it last week, and I felt bad kind of skipping over it when we were done, but I think because it's Juliette Binoche, they gave her a lot more to do than I think the quote-unquote character of Sophie, you know, whether she really existed or not. I'm just saying, like, the woman who fell in love with him while he was on trial and, like, married him while he was in prison, like, that character shouldn't have been given as much as she's been given so far. Right. And I feel like last week they gave her that great, where she was talking about, like, the perspective of justice, you know, and, like, how a trial is just two people telling competing stories. And so whichever story you think is told the best becomes the quote-unquote truth, like that whole thing. I really do think that they only did that because it's Juliette Binoche and not because people really needed to hear from the character of Sophie, at least in my opinion. But I don't know.
I don't know, because she was kind of like, wasn't she kind of a key person in keeping, like, the appeal going? And
Well, that I don't know. But okay. I will say, in terms of, like, before I let Sarah take her turn, and I'm so glad you brought that up, I do want to mention that I shared an article in our group this past week, before this week's episode aired. This came out that Sean, I don't remember his last name, the filmmaker, the documentarian, who I said his name is listed as, like, one of the producers and stuff, or at least affiliated, like, with this show. So as it turns out, obviously a reason a lot of this kind of looks like and feels like the documentary, like, you know, obviously there's some scenes that they're showing, it looks very much like a documentary, is because the filmmakers, the documentarians gave the show filmmakers access, like, to all their stuff, to their tapes, their files, all that stuff, right? So I guess, though, he took issue with, or they, the production team behind the documentary, they took issue with this particular episode because they feel like it showed that they were editing the film in such a way that they were trying to elicit a certain response or frame him in a certain way. And what they had wanted, what I think he had requested at the very least, because obviously it was too late to change anything, was that they would put some sort of disclaimer up before this episode and all the episodes going forward. And because I didn't see one before this episode, I'm guessing HBO said no. But once I've seen the episode, and I don't want to say too much now because we'll talk about the scene when we get there, I think it's going to make for good conversation. But yeah, I do see your point. You do kind of want to hear from this quote unquote character when you later find out that the character had such a hand, literally, in editing the film, and then, to your point, later being a big part of his appeal process.
Yeah, and I feel like, I don't know, I suppose if I worked, like, for years on a project, I'd feel differently seeing another version of it. But I feel like what's on HBO, I don't feel like there's a heavy opinion of he did it or didn't do it. I think it's kind of presented the same way as, like, presenting everything, and you kind of seeing, like, the criminal justice system and prison and all that. But I don't feel a strong sense of, like, they're trying to tell us, oh yeah, he absolutely
he's innocent,
did it,
right,
or he's absolutely guilty. Yeah. So I don't know.
What about you, Sarah? What did you think of this week?
Yeah, as far as I wanted to add something to that part, but as far as the episode goes, I thought it was really great, and I was, really stressed in certain parts, and friggin' Todd's making me crazy, and I thought it was interesting how the family is kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
You know, in their own kind of desperate ways. But, you know, and the actors are doing such a great job. But I agree with you about sympathizing with Juliette Binoche. And, you know, to that point, in addition to the article from John Xavier, I also read another article this morning where they interviewed Sophie. And she kind of famously does not talk about it because she doesn't want, you know, this constant, she doesn't really want to be a public person because she's, you know, an editor.
Right.
And when they were, you know, even when they were doing it, it took Michael Peterson years to talk her into actually doing any kind of interview about it. You know, and of course he was the one that talked her into it, and she thought, oh well, this will help, you know, the situation, not realizing that by talking to it, it would then basically declare the relationship open season, you know, and that she would become a public person, etc. So I mean, between the two articles, it is interesting that HBO is going down this road, because it does seem like, based on what they both said, their particular part is extremely fictionalized. She said that she never contacted him at all, you know, until well down the road, that she edited all 8 episodes of the original documentary all at one time, and it wasn't until he was declared guilty, and I think maybe even when his appeal failed or something like that, that she finally wrote him and just expressed that she thought it was, based on her knowledge of the American justice system, that was a travesty, because, you know, she thought that there was reasonable doubt.
Right. I was just going to say, like what I said last week, where it's like, I think he did it, but I also think, knowing what I know of the trial, I don't know how you come away with it.
They didn't prove it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
I agree.
Yeah, and so she's kind of aghast that
they took these liberties,
right. They're really making it seem like she's, you know, she's got this hand in it. She said they never had arguments over it. They never, you know, that she wasn't trying to influence it at all. Because
they really have her portrayed like that. One guy was like, we need to fire her.
Oh yeah, she said that never happened. And that it wasn't until they went back and filmed more, because they added to the documentary,
that's
like 2 more episodes, and then another couple episodes later, you know, with each appeal. That by then she was already talking to Michael, of course, but it was not like, and she didn't just show up, you know, right after his appeal failed, that it was another year or so down the road. So
okay. Yeah. So I could, then I would see. I feel like at one point, though, at this point, the best you can do is say, listen, I'm a filmmaker. I make different types of film, but I understand the point of, you know, making films and telling a story. And this is certainly more interesting, I guess, than the way it actually happened. But I think the best you can do is, as it sounds like what she did, is just go on record and be like, in terms of my, what's the word I'm looking for? Her, oh God, what's the word? Like her integrity and her work, right? If they're challenging in terms of that, I would just be like, I just want to go on the record. I understand that it's more titillating and it tells a better story if you put that it happened like in this order, but I just want to be clear that that's not how it happened. This is how it happened. And so anything you saw edited, if anybody came out of feeling certain kind of way, you know, it certainly wasn't because we were having these fights over editing and putting certain things in and all of that. Yeah. I'm so glad you read that. And I mean, I see their point, really but but I also did not see HBO doing what it is that they asked.
Yeah, well, you know, it's true. If they tried to do a series based on how it really happened, you know, they would it would be a lot less interesting, because it seems like she just kind of sat in a dark room and did her job. Yeah, and Sean Xavier, they didn't really even interact that much. And, you know. So.
Okay, well, let's talk about it. I do want to talk, we'll talk a little bit more about that whole process and stuff, because I did think it was an interesting conversation between the quote-unquote characters of the filmmakers. But just like we did last time, I'm going to start with the stuff in the past, like leading up to the murder, and talk about that stuff in chronological order, and then we'll do the more recent stuff. And so the stuff in the past in this episode, the first bit we get is November 2001, so this is like a month before she dies, and he loses the election. Remember, he was running for like a council member or something. Interesting. Did he really find out, like, again, I know we're questioning, I don't know how exactly things, but according to the show, I thought it was really fucked up that he finds out by checking the morning paper, like checking his mail. It's like, how do you don't find out you lose an election like that, right?
Oh, I mean, I didn't take it that's how he found out.
Oh, I did.
Like
I'm an idiot. I was like, how did that work? Okay. But it was just, he probably the night before, and then it's in the paper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just seeing it in print was probably kind of a extra kick in the balls.
Quick question. The man who drives up, the neighbor who drives up is like, I voted for you. And he's like, oh, so it was you. Is he the guy from later that buys the thing at the estate sale? The retired neighbor?
I think so.
The weird reindeer thingy?
Yeah. That just popped into my head. I did not pay much attention to the character in that scene, but then later when he bought the thing and then they show him in the end, I wondered if it's the same. But in this scene, he opens Margaret's mail, and I remember gasping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because this is just kind of like a thing you should know. Like, you just don't do this. You just don't open people's mail. Like, it wasn't even like to the parents of Margaret Peter. It was literally just Margaret Peterson, here's your mail. And this motherfucker opened it.
Yeah, that's how narcissist parents work.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it sounds like, I don't know if this really happened, but this sounds like it happened. It did not surprise me that he did it, but I just gasped because it was just like, oh, of course he did. Like, yes, this is the dad that would do that. And apparently she got bad grades. And he calls her and he yells at her and he says they're not going to pay for her plane ticket home for Thanksgiving. And he presents it as he's already spoken to Kathleen.
Right.
And, now the way it's edited, he could have, but that's not what we saw. I felt like he checked the mail and went in the house and immediately picked up the phone and called her.
Yeah.
And we find out later that's exactly what he did, because Kathleen ain't know nothing about them grades. She didn't know nothing about Thanksgiving. He's awful.
It's terrible. And he just thinks everybody's going to roll over because they don't want to argue with Michael.
And he just, like, the way he just did that so seamlessly, like, he had, like, no qualms about opening someone else's mail. And just, like, oh, Kathleen's on the same page as I am.
Right.
Even though clearly they hadn't talked about it.
Right. He said, my house, my mail. I was like, you better tell that to the feds. That's not how it works. You can't open her mail.
And that is a point that, that is a point that Sophie actually mentioned in her article, in that, she says, like, the truth was kind of subjective to Michael, and she didn't realize that until later, So he just
right, because they're not together anymore, right? Did they get married?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, they were just together, and he had thought of moving, after he got out of prison. He had talked about moving, and then, of course, by then, as we see later, he's got grandchildren by that time, and he was just kind of like, well, whether that was it or not, he claims that he decided he couldn't leave his children and his grandchildren to be in France.
Whatever.
Right.
Everybody wants you home, Michael. Anyway, also in this time, November 2001, again, a month before she dies, we see Kathleen at the gym, and she runs into, I now know her name is Carol, because I remember the scene from later. She runs into Carol, who is the woman she let go. I believe in one of the first 3 episodes, we got the flashback to Kathleen having to lay people off from Nortel. Right. And Carol is the woman she let go. And Carol is thriving, honey. She's like, girl, look. She's like, yes, I'm making half of what I made before, but my husband's still working, so we good. I get to see my kids. I have dinner, girl. Thank you. Look at me. I'm at the gym. When did I go to the gym before? Look at me. You know, she's just like living her best life. And Kathleen was so jealous. Poor baby. Kathleen was like, hold on a second. You got fired and you got to glow up? Like, how that works?
Right. How? Yeah.
She's like, I'm sitting here still working and struggling. This motherfucker's bleaching off of me.
And his kids.
So that was November. And then also in November, and again, this is like a month before she died, so it's not like we have a lot of time. Like, it's not like a lot, you know, right. To work with. They did do another flashback where Margaret snitches on Michael to Kathleen. She calls her and, you know, she's like, well, I guess I'll see you at Thanksgiving. And she's like, I ain't coming home. She's like, why not? Dad said, you said. So she was going to, where'd she end up going instead? Oh, fuck.
She was going to her aunt's.
Yeah, but I'm trying to remember their names and where that was. Was it Delaware? I don't remember where it was. But this is her mother's, the Radish side of the family, right?
Right.
Yeah. And then he had the nerve, right? Like, when they go out to dinner, Kathleen and Michael go out to dinner with another couple, and she brings it up. Like, you know, they talk about their Thanksgiving plans, and she's like, well, you know, Martha's not answering her phone. Margaret's not coming home. And he's like, why isn't Margaret coming home?
Oh, yeah. The fact that she brings it up in front of other people is an interesting choice, because she thinks that he won't be able to squirm out of it. And he plays it off like he has no idea. So she would either have to call him a liar in front of their friends or drop it, which of course she does.
She just drops it. Yep. I thought the scene was interesting because, like, when she's talking about Carol, like, the scene opens with her telling the other couple about running into Carol and how, you know, happy Carol seems and all that. And fucking, like, he's such a... Like, I knew he would have nothing nice to say after that. And sure enough, he's like, oh, she'll be crying in 6 months. She's a workaholic. She's addicted. It's like, what? Like, shut up.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Right.
And then, so I was waiting, and I mean, I guess there's still time. I feel like we didn't get, this was like the end of it. We didn't get any more flashbacks. So I'm so curious to see what Thanksgiving looks like, because a couple of things. One, when she talks about how, well, because the kids aren't coming home, like, she's like, you know what? My sister has been begging to host Thanksgiving for years. I'm going to let her do it. I'm going to take, like, I thought to myself, he ain't going to like that.
No.
And I just imagine he's going to figure out some way to make it so that they end up hosting Thanksgiving, which in turn puts extra work on her.
And as we know, is it Clayton has that incident with his girlfriend where they get in some huge blowout, which they haven't shown yet. So,
and so is that happens between now and her death, between November 2001?
That happens at Thanksgiving.
Okay. I didn't remember that's when that happened. Okay, so we're all in agreement that next episode she's hosting Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah,
and it's going to be his doing.
It's going to be a shit show.
Serving owl. No.
No.
All right, so let's back up to April 2004. And Michael's been in prison now for 6 months. and he has bruises on his face. So I was like, Michael been getting his ass beat in jail. And I'm like trying to figure out why, because we don't get anything, right? He just goes into like to check his mail or something, or pick up his stuff, and he has like a bruise on his face. We don't know why. Sophie is his pen pal at this point, according to the show anyway. They've been writing each other, and she's been sending him books. And at home, we see that the Petersons have like a new normal with Uncle Bob. And at this point in my notes, because I wasn't sure, they were packing stuff up to sell, but I wasn't sure if it was an estate sale or a yard sale, because I thought those were two different things.
Yeah.
Like, I thought an estate sale was something that goes through like lawyers, and it's typically done like maybe after someone passes away, and or if there's some sort of like through a divorce, like where any situation in which the law or attorneys need to be involved to make sure that the assets, like whatever is earned from the sale, is distributed properly. Does that make sense? So I wasn't sure if this was an estate sale that he was forced to have to pay for to pay for legal fees, or if this was just them putting up some signs around the neighborhood and saying,
Yeah. It can be that way, if like if your estate, if you die without a will, or it's contested, or in the case of divorce, like you mentioned, it's acrimonious, then it can be like if it has to go through probate or something like that, then that kind of thing would go through the courts and it would be supervised. But but anybody can throw, an estate sale, and just like essentially you just open your door and put a price tag on everything.
Okay. That has got, and now I'm going to tell you, I think I mentioned this like the first, when we did the podcast for the first 3 episodes, but my mother-in-law at the time that Donnie and I met, and, first started dating, got married, all that, we lived in Durham, and that's where we met. And my mother-in-law's house, this looks so much like the first house she had when I met him.
Wow.
And these houses are just fucking nice. Like, I completely forgotten until I was reading like an article. It might have been the article about the documentarians taking issue with this episode. But they just mentioned that she was found at the bottom of their back stairs. And I kind of forgotten that, that wasn't even like the main staircase. That's how big this fucking house was. Like, you have back stairs. Like, what the fuck? It's a beautiful fucking house. And I just thought about like how that must feel to have to like go through your house. It's one thing to pack, to move because you can't afford to live there anymore, but you're selling everything, and to be putting like stickers on, like you said, just open your doors, and it's just like everything must go.
Yeah, to have people picking through your stuff and be like, how much is this? Actually, I like that thing, and I don't want you to have it,
Margaret put the, I couldn't tell how much, but the grenade that he kept on his desk, that went up for sale. Yeah. So they're preparing for this sale. We learned that Martha quit her job. Now, is this her girlfriend or just like a roommate?
I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell if that was like a roommate or just a roommate.
Right.
Oh my God, they were roommates. Yeah. I didn't see the roommate fast enough, so yeah.
Yeah, because all I was thinking, I was like, what happened to the sister? What?
I know. She was awesome.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years. I get it. So then we get to what I think ultimately is part of the issue that the filmmakers had with the way this was done, which is we get this debate between Jean and Sophie, and I don't remember the other man's name. The money guy,
producer.
the producer guy.
It's Denis.
I like him.
I was just gonna say like Dennis, but Frank.
Denis. I like that. I like him, by the way.
Yeah.
I do too.
He's a great actor.
He is. I just feel like he makes a lot of sense. I like how he was like from the beginning. Oh, he did it. Like, well, no, because I feel like, wasn't there a scene with them in a diner in the very beginning, like after they met and they were having pie or something? And I think in the beginning he wasn't, I feel like Denis wasn't sure. I think they were both kind of like, they couldn't tell.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I just find it interesting that he spent just as much time with them as Jean did, and he clearly came out on the end of this, that this motherfucker did it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Ellen? I feel like I cut you off.
No, I just feel like at the beginning it was just a project of like, just to get the story. And then after everything, he's just I feel like he came across like, what are these two assholes talking about?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, their debate is about leaving, whether or not they should leave in the part of the medical examiner's testimony, if I'm not mistaken, about her, Kathleen's broken cartilage in her neck area, right? If you remember, what we were shown was that first the medical examiner was not sure that this was a sign that strangulation had been attempted. But apparently sometime between her initial finding and actually them going to trial, she became quite certain that she had been strangled and that that's why that was done. And so she testifies to that, and they want to take it out. When I say they, well, it seems like Sophie wants to take it out. Jean was leaning on, I really like how he handled this too, because he was just like hearing them both out, and he was like, okay, Denis, like, if we take it out, what do we put in its place? Right. And then Denis said something like smart, and he was like, no, like, I'm like, work with me. I just felt so bad for him. He was like between two bickering children.
Right. He really just wanted to hear them out. He was a good negotiator, I thought.
I thought so too, yeah. And at this point in the episode, like, again, I knew that they had issues with it. So I'm watching the scene and I'm just like, so far, I feel like this is kind of normal, I would imagine, right? Like if you're making a film where you're like, I just want to show what happened. So we're just going to stand here and have our cameras rolling, act like we're not here. And then I'm going to take all this footage, I'll, edit out some bullshit, put in music, and I'm just going to show the world and people can make up their minds. But that's not what happens. And I feel like this was a very natural conversation, right? Like, if we leave this in discussing what to leave in and what to take out, like when I said take out the bullshit, okay, what's bullshit? In discussing that, I think it's only natural to say, well, if we leave this in, what might people think? Like, what does it look like we're saying? Right. If we make the decision to leave this in or take this out. Like, at this point, I don't know about you guys, but at this point, I was like, this feels like a very normal, good conversation to have. Right. Like, I don't feel like anybody was pushing to make him seem less innocent or guilty.
Right. I definitely saw their point in that, if you include the quote from the medical examiner on the bench, then you have to include the whole quote, because if you don't include the whole quote, then it's going to sound more definitive, and then he calls into question the whole thing, and then by that point you're adding 5 minutes, and then if you add another the context in which originally she was not sure, that's another 10 to 15 minutes, and so it makes sense ultimately that they decided against it.
And she wants balance is what she's arguing for, and the fact that I think it was like, if we take this out, we will put in, and I think they ended up showing it to us, right? Like a conversation between him and Clayton about ego and something, or him waxing poetic about it. Because Michael loved to hear himself talk about shit. With his little pipe in his hand, But I think this was a scene where it was like, if we take it out, we would put this conversation in, and he was like, what would be the purpose of that conversation? And she says, because it helps us understand him. And he's like, we don't need to understand him. Denis was so over this shit. Yeah. And I do like, at one point, one of them questioned, I just thought this whole scene was fascinating. Like, what is accurate? Because she was like, well, it's not accurate. And he goes, well, how do you know it's accurate? You know? I just thought this was super interesting.
Yeah.
If this was my job, I thought this was a really interesting conversation. But yeah, it totally didn't look good that she was, in terms of the show, writing him at the time that this was going on. Okay. So now we're back to April 2004. Now, this is what I have in my notes. I was like, is Michael dealing drugs for protection? He is. And then I put, he voted for Gore and he made a gym buddy.
I voted for Gore.
When he said that, he was like, you're not racist, sorry. He was like, of course not. I voted for Gore.
That could not sound more like white male snooty, you know?
That was so real. Like, every black person watching that was like, yup, that's exactly what he would say. We've had that. It was like the scene from Get Out. I would have voted for Obama a third time if I could. It's like, okay, white man, thanks.
Calm down. Yeah.
Sophie questions a coworker while editing. While she's working, one of her coworkers is leaving. I thought this was interesting because I didn't get, until I think she mentions it in this conversation, I'd forgotten about the neck injury and how her diving in the pool, and then she had to wear that neck brace a few months before her death, when she was like, could the broken cartilage have been from that act? I was like, yeah, forgot about that. Yeah,
that's a possibility. Yep.
And then she said something I thought was interesting. If I could just talk to him.
Yeah.
And I wondered if, like, this actually made a lot of sense to me. And again, as the real woman, if this didn't happen, because this is attached to, one, my work, my career, you know, and again, my integrity as a professional, but also now my personal life, right? I would not like this. But when they have her in the show say this, I thought it made a lot of sense, because I imagine, as someone who was like obsessed with this shit when I first saw it, you know, and like, oh, can't wait to watch it. You remember Ellen, right? Like, watch the next episode, and we're all talking about it, particularly if you like true crime stuff. I would just imagine if my job was going through those hours and hours of footage and editing this together, like, I could imagine someone saying, you know, I bet I could tell if he did it, if I could just talk to him.
Right.
Like, I think we all like to think that we are incapable of being.
Know.
Yeah. So I get that. That whole, like, man, if I could just talk to him, he couldn't lie to me. Like, I would be able to tell. Like, that whole thing.
Right.
I don't know how you get to, man, if I could just fuck him.
No, for sure. I could just have a conjugal visit with him.
So Clay and Todd visit him in jail, and we learned that the house is not selling well. Now they were asking. He said, we're not going to get as much as we're asking. And Michael goes, so what, $1 million? And then, what was it, 700,000?
Yeah, 750. Yeah.
And he was like, 750? It has 6 bathrooms. I was like, why did y'all need 6 bathrooms?
Right.
Okay. But, yeah, no one needs 6 bathrooms. I mean, well, I'm so sure some people do, but yeah, that's gotta suck. And he was so, like, shocked when they were like,
yeah.
The law says a murder was committed.
Right. It's a murder house. We literally just painted the stairs. Yeah.
Yes.
We've been walking by Kathleen's entire bloodstream
for 3 years. Right?
Yeah.
3 years, too.
Jesus Christ. Why do you think we can't sell this bitch?
And bats. Yeah.
So he asked...
It's the bats.
Oh,
it's not the murder. It's just the bats.
Do you like how he turned the bats into a funny...
A joke. Yeah.
Yeah, dinner table story. Yeah. Asshole.
I mean, I laughed.
Yeah, I did too, but but I was like, motherfucker,
there,
you're supposed to pay to have those things relocated. You're sitting there like, wait till I tell you what those bats did. As his wife, I would have stabbed him with a steak knife. I'm just saying.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But he asked them to put money on his books, right? Because he's like, okay, one of you might have to break this down for me because I wasn't sure how this whole thing was working. But apparently, Michael was buying stamps and like giving them to that black guy, I don't remember his name, and they were making sure nobody fucks with Michael. So as long as once a week Michael was giving this guy these stamps that he was asking for, they were providing protection. And so Todd was like, yeah, no problem, I will handle putting money on your books like every Monday or whatever it was. And Clayton was like, no, I'll do it. And poor Clayton's such a fuck up. And you can just tell, it seems like he's gotten his life together in the past 3 years.
And it's the brother who's really...
Yeah, it's the other one, right.
Yeah.
So, and and I feel like we've been seeing this, right, throughout the whole thing where he's been wanting to help and be included or whatever and get some praise from Michael. And so he's like, I'll do it. And he's like, they argue over it. And Michael's like, Todd will do it. And then we'll talk about what happens later. And so how is this, before we move on to the next point, how is the drug thing work? It is drugs, right? It's not just regular stamps, right?
I don't know. I took it.
I don't know what the fuck. I'm such. I know, me too.
Like
I am so vanilla when it comes to shit
currency.
like this.
Like cigarettes, I was like, prison currency.
Yeah.
I just
so
thought,
like
he needed money in his money in his account so he could get whatever they made him get at the commissary. Yeah.
So I thought it was drugs, but maybe it is just stamps.
I legit thought it was stamps. I mean, it's weird, but
but I mean, I get it. Like, yeah, it doesn't. I mean, it
stamps
makes sense.
Are expensive.
And it makes sense
when I want to send out, Christmas cards. I think, like, do I really want to spend $150 on stamps this year? And,
Well, I just want to say, as somebody who gets those lovely pictures of your beautiful boy every Christmas, I appreciate what you spend on my stamp. So thank you.
Well,
but I mean, it makes sense, like you said, Ellen, right? If it's whatever it is that you need in prison, if you don't have to have money on your books, so you get some dopey white dude to pay for it, and all you have to do is be big, black, and mean on his behalf, then fuck it. I mean, you do what you gotta do. But okay, so the other thing that comes up in this conversation, this motherfucker, when they were talking, like, they're in the visitors room and like there's like an altercation like across the room or something, and like Clayton jumped and he said something like, how horrible the place was or something. And do you remember when Michael snapped at him and he was like, you only did 4 years?
Yeah.
And I was like, nigga, you only been in here 6 months. He did more time than you. What are you talking
about? Like, Clayton was like, I don't know how I survived this. And he's like, you only did 4 years and you were guilty. I was like,
yes!
Jesus Christ. An asshole.
He's such a dick. He said only did 4 years. I was like, you can't even handle the 6 months you got. You've been getting your ass beat. What do you mean? Okay, so then the next thing I have, and I'm gonna, before we get into the details, I just had to make a side note again because I didn't know what the fuck was on. This is what I have written in the margins. Is Michael gonna fuck this man in prison? Okay. Listen.
Wait, which one?
Yes.
I was like, is he trying to like get it on with this dude or
what is happening? So like so yeah, I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit. So when Todd fucks up, right? Listen, Todd took his ass to, where was he? Mexico? Where was Todd? I don't know where he was, but wherever. Yes. So trying to sell like timeshares to these rich white girls, right? So him and his friend and and these two girls, they drinking and stuff, and he puts on the juvenile, and it's just awkward. And you ask Kaylee, I didn't know what to do with my face. I don't know what to do with my hands. I was I was writing notes from like the prior scene, right? And then he fucking goes over to the radio and that song came on and I was like, oh no, wait, what's this? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? And I was just like looking for an escape route and Kaylee was laughing at me. I was like, my secondhand embarrassment is not built for this. But this motherfucker thought he just knew he was about to be on TMZ. He was like, who's the guy? You guys know what I'm talking about. The girl, what was her name? Natalie? The girl who went to Aruba.
Natalie, the blonde girl.
The blonde girl, yes. Yeah. He thought he was about to have one of them situations on his hand when he woke up.
Oh, yeah, when he woke up.
And notice how he was like, where is she? Is she like, did you really think y'all covered up a murder last night? Like, what kind of life are you living that you think?
What are you taking, Todd?
And his friend was like, man, I need you to get your shit together. Okay. So when that happens, Todd doesn't put the money in the account because he was drunk, right?
Right.
So, I'm sorry, I think that's my dog. Yes. So he doesn't have his protection money, right? Yeah. And he goes over to the guy and he's like, I don't have it, whatever. And then they're in the prison yard. He goes over to the black guy who connected him to the protection thing to begin with, right? And he goes, I didn't have the money. I didn't have it this week. I didn't have the stamps. So can I just stand here? And the guy's like, sure, it's a free country. You can stand where you want. So I was like, oh, okay. The white dudes are going to think he still has the brother's protection because he's just standing there, right? I thought, that's really nice of brother to do this for Michael. And then there was another scene where, get out of here, boy, where they walked by each other. And did they touch fingers?
I thought they touched fingers. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was, and just the way that when he walked over to him, I forget his name too. He's like lifting the weights, and he was just standing there, and I'm like, this is just sort of suggestive.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of staring
of his wiener over the guy's head.
Oh,
yeah. You know,
and
what
then
I mean?
like not pick that up.
He was standing behind him when he was lifting.
Yes.
And I was like, I don't know, it just had a little homoerotic tone to me.
And then there was scenes of them like just like eye contact, like, or he would just like walk by his cell and they would just look at each other, and I'm like, what is happening? And then but then they did the whole, he introduced him to the other guy, so I was like, oh, okay. But then again, when he was like, it's a free country, stand where you want, and I got what that was, I was like, oh, that's really nice of him. And then I was like, oh, are they fucking? So are they fucking? I feel like Sarah thinks they're fucking.
Maybe. I rewound the like pinky touch scene legitimately like 5 times, trying to figure out who touched who first, what's going on there, with him like muttering staircase. Like originally I thought, oh, has he seen that there's a woman waiting for Michael in the visitor center, and you know, he's like, hey, you know, you got some hot chick waiting for you, and Michael didn't know. Or is it the other thing in which, you know, they're developing feelings for each other? I don't know.
Oh my God.
See, I didn't, like, I didn't take it as, like, feelings. I took it more as, like, an arrangement.
Convenience, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like,
sure.
Yeah.
So I definitely, at least on the show, I mean, I don't know if this happened in real life.
Right.
At least on the show, I took it as a strong insinuation that there was some sexual favors going on.
Well, that would make sense.
At least hand release. That's my opinion.
All right, sure.
No, I don't know anything under the sun, but
yeah. I feel like that's where I came away, because the hand touch, I couldn't think of any other explanation for that. Like, I originally thought I missed like a what do they call it? A handoff, not to be confused with a hand job, but of like some drugs or something. Like, I was so confused, but like the lingering looks and stuff, I'm like,
yeah.
Look at that. And apparently, like, I don't understand how Michael Peterson was getting so much ass. I just don't.
Yeah.
But then again, it's in prison, so I'm guessing it's like slim pickings. So. I guess you're not really picky. Okay, so Jean is overseeing the music for the movie, which I really like this because that is the music, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yes,
that's the theme.
It was interesting.
Mm-hmm. And this is where Denis is like, Sophie gotta go. And she walks in on this conversation and she offers to stop writing Michael, which apparently I'm guessing, she, according to the show, in their version of things, she did. Like, she wrote him and said, this has to be it for a while. To the point where apparently she didn't even open the last letter from him until after the film came out, right? Was it like she was carrying it around or something? So I thought they were going out of their way to kind of show that she was not inappropriate. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, not influenced for,
right.
Mm-hmm.
So those musicians were mad. How many times did they have to play it? It was like slower. I was like, how do you go slower than that?
Thoughts? Yes. No. Slower.
Can I go home?
Real sassy.
Oh my god! No, they were so pissed. So then there's we already talked about that. So yeah, Clay ends up being the one to fix the situation with the money. He has it set like automatic from his bank account straight into Michael's thing every week. And then he announces that his wife Becky is pregnant.
Yeah.
Oh, that was nice. This how he found out his appeal was denied, apparently, according to the show, is we got to find out this black guy's name.
A surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, he was just like, so, wow, you're, because they were talking, and Michael was like normal. He's like, wow, you're handling it really good. I was not this together when my shit got denied. He was like, what do you mean?
Yep.
Yeah. And then the kids get on the phone and discuss the appeal, and Martha's just basically high through the whole conversation. I'm like, girl.
Just literally just lighten up.
Can you blame her? Like, can you blame, like,
right.
Man, I mean, I know I was kind of hard on the guys, and again, this is how the show is presenting them, and it's definitely not, I mean, I feel like I picked up some of this stuff from the documentary, and certainly when you know about, like, Clayton's history or whatever, they were definitely painted, at least by Michael, in certain roles, right?
Yeah.
But, like, they didn't ask for this, right? Like,
right.
They didn't ask this for their father to kill their mother, and they have to, like, go through this. It's a lot. I mean, I would have spent every day high. I mean, I do that now. So can you imagine, like, going through that? Why not? Mm-hmm. So the film premieres, and I thought this was interesting. There's a conversation between Jean and Sophie, and they were talking about, like, this is before the viewing, like, what a difference, like, what the film could achieve. And I thought, this is where I thought, yeah, I could see them taking issue with this, because it wasn't that they were wishing for, like, a hit or another Oscar.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, both of them were like hoping it would get him released, or at least a new trial.
Yeah.
And then I thought, yeah, if I was the filmmaker, even if that's what I thought, I don't know that I would want people, like, that's not something I would have said at that time. Does that make sense? Because of that. Mm-hmm. Because I would worry that people would think that I put that in my film. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I thought it was really interesting. I thought, wow, I would be mad if I watched this conversation between the two of them. Because I can't remember their exact phrasing, but I felt like it was like, if this works, he'll be free or so. I mean, I was like, wow, that's... I thought that's very different from saying, oh, if this is a hit, we'll get another Oscar or something. But...
yeah.
Right.
Then we get a montage at the end, right? Margaret gets the movie from Sophie in the mail. Yeah. And she immediately puts it in. Then we get the finger touch, which I was just like, what the fuck? Are they fucking? And then the retired man next door, the neighbor who bought the, what was it? A reindeer? Lights?
It's like a wire thing.
Yeah.
Like, it looked like wire.
Christmas
reindeer.
Lawn decoration, yeah.
Yeah.
He's next door, and what was he... Wait, why did he have those autopsy photos?
I think he was just someone who was, like, obsessed with it. And
because I was like, did he buy those in the yard sale?
Well, he's an attorney, so I'm not sure. I know he's retired, but he was an attorney, so I'm not sure if he was able to get it that way or what.
They did mention, I thought this was interesting, remember the scene where they showed Caitlin, that's her biological daughter's name, right? Caitlin and her father, Kathleen's ex-husband, right? When they were about to show her the autopsy photos, I'm pretty sure one of the attorneys said, because I remember thinking, wow, I didn't know that. They said, these pictures, these autopsy photos are available via, and they said like an act, but it wasn't like the Freedom of Information Act. Like that I know, but it was something else. So they were like, so they're going to get out. Like, people are going to be able to see them. So you'd rather you see them here in this controlled setting than seeing them online or something like that. So I remember them phrasing that the way, and me thinking, so anybody could just go look up autopsy photos? And I don't know if it's because it's the autopsy photos of a crime like this that makes it, I don't know. But okay. But the way he just had them, like, in a manila folder, I was like... Because you know how Michael always has inappropriate files in his desk, like, right at his fingertips?
Right. So classic. Right? Yeah. Who doesn't have autopsy photos?
Right? I was like, what's this name?
Yeah, just handy.
I sure do.
20-year-old autopsy photo. Hanging out.
But he looks at the lacerations on her skull, on her scalp. And, he looks over at this stuffed... What? Is it an owl? He has a stuffed bird.
Yes. On the wall.
Yeah. On the wall. As you do. Yeah. And he looks at the talons.
How do you even get a stuffed owl? Like, aren't they protected?
I don't know why
we're
stuffing
them.
Yeah, but I don't know why we're stuffing out. I didn't know that was a thing we were doing. This is not...
Who has that?
Right? Like, why would you do that to an owl? But he looks at the talons and he's like, clearly making a connection. And again, if I didn't know the documentary, if I was just like somebody who just likes my HBO dramas and I'm watching this week after week and I don't know this story, I don't know anything about Michael Peterson, I would be like, holy shit. Like, next week, are we going to learn an owl did it?
Right.
So yeah, and then it ends with Sophie visiting him in prison.
Yeah, just surprising him.
Denise said, he said, if I was married to her husband, like, who could blame her? Something like that. And I was like, what is wrong with you? Her husband looked delightful. What do you mean? This poor man ain't asked for this. But there was like a scene of her at the dinner table
with a child.
Yeah, I was like, wow, they had young kids, huh?
Yeah.
She looked miserable though, so
yeah, right.
I was like, I get it, sis, I get it. But I don't get the Michael Peterson part. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
Oh Lord, that. So anyway, so yeah, that's it, you guys. That was all of episode 5. I don't think I missed anything else. I cannot believe Michael took his ass to prison and got a boyfriend.
Well, he couldn't come up with the stamp, so he had to do something.
And joined a gang. He joined
a gang. Oh my god. So yeah, that's it. We will be back next week to talk about, what is it, episode 6?
Yeah.
6, right? It's 8 of them total, right? Yeah. So yeah, next week we find out that the owl did it.
I mean,
I can't wait to see this.
Are they gonna do a reenactment with the owl?
They fucking better.
Yeah.
This is what I like. Every week I approach the episode with trepidation, and every once in a while I just think is she gonna wrestle with the fucking owl in her hair? And what is that gonna look like?
I can already see it. I can already see Toni Collette.
Yes.
Struggling with this owl.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think isn't the theory I thought it was something it attacked her kind of at the door, right? The sliding glass door.
Right.
And she was disoriented and fell or
something like that.
There was some kind of tree branch material or something like that, and they found, so I didn't know if she was standing out by a tree looking at the house and the owl attacked her, maybe she was looking up at the attic trying to figure out if the bats were leaving the house,
right
and the owl was hunting the bats. Do they do that? I don't even know.
What if it was could you imagine if it was both? What
owls
if she
and bats?
No, what if she was attacked by an owl and then he killed her?
Oh, I thought you meant both owls and bats. What if it was all three of them?
Right.
And she got the hantavirus from the bats.
See? It's an explanation. It's reasonable. All you need is reasonable doubt.
What if he unleashed the owl on her?
Yes, what if he's a raptor trainer?
That's where all the money was going. He was taking owl training lessons. See?
Oh, you know what just popped in my head? Natalie Holloway was the woman in Aruba.
Yes,
the young woman in Aruba.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I think when I said, I'm the blonde, and then how I am, I felt guilty for sounding very glib, and I was
no, I understand.
Deep in my head, going, what was her last name?
Yeah. No, thank you. So we'll be back next week with episode 6. In the meantime, trying to think of what other podcasts are free right now. Oh, Halo is finishing up. I'm posting that for our premium folks today at the time of recording this, so that means it'll be up for free in 2 days after that. I feel like there's another thing I'm totally forgetting, something else that's free. Oh, My Name, the K-drama My Name that I'm covering with Kaylee. We'll be putting the full season coverage of that up for free this week as well. Over on Patreon, though, if you go to patreon.com/podcastfandom, we are covering, beginning this week, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Shining Girls, We Own This City, the new K-drama, Inspector Coup, and then in terms of anime, God, what are we covering? Demon Slayer, Entertainment District, Arc, Tiger and Bunny, and Spy Family, my current new fave. Oh my God, it's so cute, you guys. So wholesome, so funny, such a good show. Anyway, thank you guys for listening, and we will talk to you next week.